Booterbee was the internet's most feared disruptor, a hacker who thrived on chaos. Billy the Goat was the community's favorite entertainer, a streamer loved for his laughter and kindness. When their worlds collided live on stream, thousands of viewers witnessed a chilling moment that blurred the line between online entertainment and real-life crime. What began as a game turned into a nightmare no one could forget. Booterbee was not born into fame. He carved it out of the shadows of the internet, piece by piece, until his name became something people whispered in both fear and fascination. On the surface, he was just another young gamer, sitting in front of a glowing screen late into the night, fingers racing across the keyboard. But unlike others, he didn't just play games, he broke them. He slipped through cracks in the code, found backdoors in private servers, and made entire online communities bend to his will. The more chaos he caused, the more people tuned in to watch. What started as a small group of curious followers grew into thousands, each waiting eagerly to see what he would destroy next. His reputation was built on unpredictability. No one could tell when or where he would strike. Some nights he would crash into a streamer's live session, flooding the chat with bizarre symbols that no one could trace. Other nights he would cut a broadcast in half, leaving audiences staring at a black screen and wondering what had just happened. Each stunt fueled his legend, and the name Booterbee became a warning. If you were big enough online, he might come for you next. Despite his rising fame, Booterbee never showed his face. His identity was wrapped in layers of secrecy. Some believed he was a teenager, living in his parents' basement, while others insisted he was a professional hacker with years of experience. The only thing anyone truly knew was the sound of his digital footprint, those glitchy interruptions, the sudden static in a stream, and the eerie messages that always appeared before the storm hit. For his fans, he was an entertainer. For his targets, he was a nightmare. The internet's dark corners buzzed with rumors about his next move. Some said he was planning to take down entire gaming tournaments. Others claimed he had built networks of bots powerful enough to silence platforms for days. But none of those whispers compared to the chilling truth that only Booterbee knew. His plans had shifted from the digital world to the physical one. The game was no longer confined to screens and servers. He wanted to show the world that Booterbee wasn't just a name online. He was a presence. And soon he would step out of the shadows and into the real world, where no one would be able to ignore him. Billy the Goat's journey into streaming was the opposite of Booterbee's. Where Booter thrived on fear and disruption, Billy built his reputation on laughter and community. His streams were filled with energy, bright overlays, and moments that made viewers feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. He didn't have the skills of a professional gamer or the strategies of a competitive player, but what he lacked in technique, he made up for with personality. His jokes were clumsy, his laugh was contagious, and his willingness to embarrass himself for a challenge made his audience adore him. What started as a hobby quickly transformed into a career, and soon, Billy the Goat was one of the fastest-growing names on the platform. Every night, thousands of viewers logged in to watch him. He gave away gift cards, invited fans into games, and even turned his chat into a space where people could vent about their lives. For many, his channel was more than entertainment. It was an escape from stress and loneliness. This sense of connection was the foundation of his success, and it was also what made him stand out. Unlike other streamers who seemed distant, Billy felt approachable. He called out usernames, reacted to comments in real time, and treated his fans like friends. The bigger his channel grew, the more loyal his following became. But fame brought more than just adoration. With popularity came jealousy, trolls, and enemies who saw his success as an opportunity to exploit. At first, Billy shrugged it off. He laughed at the insults, ignored the strange messages, and told his fans not to worry. Yet behind his smile, he felt the pressure of maintaining his perfect image. The internet could love someone one day and turn on them the next. He knew he was only one mistake away from losing everything he had built. It was during this rise that Booterbee took notice. Billy the Goat wasn't just another streamer, he was a symbol of positivity in a space Booter thrived on corrupting. To Booter, the idea of targeting someone so beloved wasn't just tempting, it was irresistible. He wanted to prove that no one, no matter how loved or protected by their fans, was beyond his reach. Billy's success became a challenge, a wall Booter felt he had to break through. The first signs were subtle. Billy's streams occasionally glitched without explanation. The chat filled with strange strings of numbers that moderators couldn't delete. Sometimes the stream would lag in perfect rhythm with messages that read like riddles. Fans assumed it was nothing more than technical issues or bored trolls, but those who followed Booter B closely recognized the pattern. These disruptions were his signature, breadcrumbs left behind before a bigger strike. Billy didn't realize it then, but his life had shifted. He wasn't just climbing to the top of streaming culture. He was walking straight into the path of someone who had built their reputation by tearing others down. To his audience, the show was still fun and lighthearted. To Booter B, it was the opening act of a darker performance. The warning signs began quietly, almost too faint to notice at first. During one of Billy the Goat's late-night gaming sessions, the screen froze for a split second before resuming as if nothing had happened. He laughed it off, joking that his internet was as lazy as he was. The chat filled with laughing emojis, and the moment passed. But the interruptions didn't stop there. Over the following weeks, the glitches grew stranger. Streams would drop without warning, sometimes replaced with flickers of static that looked deliberate rather than accidental. His moderators worked overtime, but the problems only deepened. The chat started noticing something peculiar, messages that didn't look like anything a normal viewer would type. Long sequences of numbers, letters and symbols appeared in the feed. No matter how quickly moderators banned the accounts, new ones emerged, posting the same cryptic codes. Some viewers dismissed them as bots. Others, the ones who had heard whispers of Booter B's past exploits, recognized the pattern. It was the same kind of digital graffiti that marked his earlier attacks. But most fans refused to believe their cheerful streamer could be caught up in anything so sinister. To them it was just part of the chaos of being online. Billy tried to ignore it. He reassured his fans that everything was fine, calling the codes a prank and insisting his equipment was to blame for the glitches. Yet in private, he felt uneasy. His setup was new, his internet stable, and nothing about the interruptions made sense. Late at night, after logging off, he replayed the streams and studied the footage. Sometimes, hidden in the static, he thought he saw shapes, like shadows moving across the screen. Other times the codes seemed to change, arranging themselves into phrases that were almost readable. It was as if someone wasn't just trying to disrupt his show, but to send him a message. As the disturbances grew, fans began to speculate. Some claimed the numbers were coordinates. Others thought they were countdowns to a bigger event. A few insisted Booter B was behind it, recalling how he targeted streamers who got too popular. The chat debates became heated, with some warning Billy to take the threats seriously while others accused him of staging the chaos for attention. The mystery only fueled more viewers to tune in, pushing his numbers higher than ever. But behind the rising fame was a dangerous reality. Someone was watching him closely, and it wasn't just an audience. One night, the codes stopped appearing altogether. For a brief moment, it seemed like the haunting presence had vanished. Billy felt relief wash over him, believing the nightmare was over. But the silence was more unsettling than the disruptions had been. His regular viewers noticed it too, commenting that the streams felt unusually calm, almost too normal. What none of them realized was that Booter B had moved past sending signals. The warnings had served their purpose. The stage was now set, and the game was shifting from digital interference to something far more personal. The night that changed everything began like any other for Billy the Goat. He sat in front of his glowing screen, laughing into the microphone as his chat scrolled endlessly with emotes and playful banter. Thousands of viewers tuned in, enjoying the usual blend of gaming, jokes and giveaways. For the first hour, everything felt normal. No glitches, no strange codes, no signs of the mysterious disruptions that had plagued his streams. It almost seemed too good to be true, as if the unease of the past weeks had finally lifted. But that calm was nothing more than a curtain about to be pulled away. Halfway through the stream, something unusual happened. A faint light flickered behind the blinds in Billy's room. At first, it looked like a passing car on the street, but the glow didn't fade. Instead, it grew brighter, sharper, as if headlights were locked directly onto his window. The camera, set up at just the right angle, caught the reflection, and the chat erupted in speculation. Viewers spammed questions: was someone outside? Was it a prank? Billy glanced over his shoulder, visibly puzzled, but trying to keep the mood light. He joked about having stalkers and shrugged it off, but the unease in his eyes told a different story. The headlights didn't move. Minutes passed, and still they glared through the blinds, too steady to belong a passing car. The chat, once filled with laughter, turned frantic. Some begged Billy to check outside, while others warned him not to. A few even typed the same name again and again: Booterby. The legend of the hacker had become so ingrained in online culture that people assumed he was behind anything strange. But this time, the theory felt disturbingly real. The camera captured Billy standing from his chair, moving out of frame as he went to peek through the blinds. For a moment, the stream fell silent, except for the muffled sounds of movement. Then he returned, his face pale, his playful demeanor gone. He didn't say much, only that someone had pulled up and parked outside his house. His attempt to laugh it off came out shaky, and the viewers felt the tension tighten around them like a rope. This was no prank. The car engine outside cut off, leaving only silence. The glow of the headlights dimmed as the vehicle powered down, but the sense of dread only grew stronger. On screen, Billy shifted nervously in his chair, his eyes darting toward the door. What had been an ordinary night of streaming had suddenly turned into something unthinkable. Viewers weren't just watching entertainment anymore, they were witnessing a real event as it happened, powerless to intervene. And somewhere outside, waiting in the dark, was the figure who had spent weeks leaving warnings and codes. Booterby was no longer hiding behind a screen. He had arrived. The moment Booterby crossed the threshold of Billy the Goat's house, the tone of the stream shifted from eerie suspense to chilling reality. At first, the viewers weren't sure what was happening. The screen flickered, the microphone crackled, and the faint sound of the front door opening crept into the feed. The camera, still pointed toward Billy's gaming setup, caught nothing but the soft glow of the monitor and the shadows shifting across the wall. But the sound of heavy footsteps echoed unmistakably, moving from the hallway toward the room where Billy sat frozen. For a few seconds, Billy remained in his chair, paralyzed by the intrusion. He glanced off-camera as if torn between confronting the noise or pretending it wasn't real. The chat turned frenzied, messages flying so quickly they blurred into a wall of text. Some begged him to leave the house immediately, while others insisted he call for help. But the sound of the intruder was growing louder, deliberate and steady, leaving no doubt that someone had entered his home. The microphone picked up the faint creak of the floorboards. As the intruder drew closer, Billy finally stood his chair, rolling backward with a screech that made the viewers' hearts race. He moved out of frame, and for a moment the stream showed nothing but the glowing background of his gaming setup, eerily empty. Then came the unmistakable noise of the bedroom door nudging open, followed by a long pause that stretched unbearably. The silence was broken by a sudden thud, the kind of sound that could have been a dropped object, or something much worse. When the camera tilted, as if knocked by accident, the scene grew even more disturbing. The lens now captured the corner of the room at an odd angle, showing part of the floor, the rolling chair, and Billy's headset dangling from the desk. A faint shadow crossed the view, just enough to suggest a figure moving inside the room. The chat went wild with terror, thousands of viewers pleading for someone, anyone, to intervene. But this wasn't a movie or a staged prank, it was unfolding in real time, and everyone watching was powerless. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the chaos quieted. The camera continued to record the dimly lit corner of the room, unmoving, while the chat erupted with confusion and dread. No one knew where Billy had gone. No one could see who had entered the room. All they had were the sounds, the fleeting shadows, and the sickening realization that they had just witnessed a crime live on stream. By the time the feed finally cut out, replaced with a blank black screen, the audience was left in collective shock. Some convinced themselves it was a stunt for attention. Others knew, deep down, that what they had seen was far too raw and terrifying to be staged. Whatever the truth was, one fact remained undeniable: Booter B had breached the barrier between the online world and real life, and Billy the Goat had paid the price. The silence that followed the break-in was almost more disturbing than the chaos itself. The stream had gone black, cutting off abruptly after the chilling noises and flickers of shadows. For thousands of viewers across the world, the final moments replayed in their minds on loop. They remembered the heavy footsteps, the muffled scuffles, the sudden crash, and then nothing. Many sat frozen at their screens, unwilling to believe what they had just witnessed. Others rushed to social media, flooding timelines with frantic posts, clips of the stream, and desperate questions about what had happened to Billy the Goat. In the hours that followed, confusion turned into fear. Billy's usual presence online, his constant updates, his playful tweets, his after-stream interactions vanished completely. His channel went dark, with no new broadcasts or posts. Fans who were used to seeing him every night were now left staring at silence. At first, a handful of people clung to the hope that it was all a publicity stunt, a way to build hype or attract attention. But as time passed, and Billy failed to reappear, the mood shifted. Concern outweighed disbelief. Something was terribly wrong. By morning, the story had spread beyond his community. News outlets picked it up, reporting on the strange live disappearance of a streamer with thousands of viewers. Clips from the final broadcast circulated endlessly, each frame analyzed by online detectives. Some slowed down the footage to catch every flicker of shadow, convinced they could make out the shape of the intruder. Others dissected the audio, isolating faint background noises in hopes of finding clues. But no matter how closely people studied the evidence, the answer remained the same. Billy the Goat had vanished without explanation. Friends and moderators, who knew him personally, confirmed what viewers feared most. Billy wasn't answering calls, texts, or emails. He hadn't checked in with anyone after the stream ended. Eventually, someone contacted the authorities and an official missing person report was filed. Detectives arrived at his home, where the eerie scene of the night before still lingered. His gaming setup was intact, the chair pushed aside, the headset lying on the floor exactly as it had been on stream. But Billy himself was nowhere to be found. The police treated the situation seriously from the start, given the massive audience that had essentially witnessed part of the incident live, yet even they struggled with the bizarre circumstance. There were no signs of forced entry on the front door, suggesting that the intruder either picked the lock with skill or had some other means of entry. Neighbors reported seeing a car idling outside the house around the time of the stream, but none could describe the driver clearly. It was as if whoever came for Billy had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only fear and speculation. For Billy's fans, the disappearance was devastating. His community, once a place of joy and connection, turned into a forum of grief, anger, and paranoia. Theories spread like wildfire, and one name appeared over and over again: Booter B. For many, there was no question who was behind it. The codes, the glitches, the ominous signs leading up to that night, it all pointed to the same person. But without concrete proof, all anyone had were suspicions, and suspicions did little to bring Billy back. The case of the missing streamer had now crossed from internet lore into real-world tragedy. What had begun as a night of entertainment ended with a chilling mystery, and the unsettling truth settled into the minds of everyone who had watched. They had seen Billy the Goat vanish before their eyes, and no one knew if he would ever be found. Detectives wasted no time digging into the strange disappearance, and the investigation quickly became one of the most talked-about cases online. From the start, the evidence inside Billy the Goat's house raised more questions than it answered. There were no shattered locks, no broken windows, no overturned furniture, only small details that seemed unsettling when pieced together. His headset on the floor, the chair rolled away, a soda can knocked over near the desk. It was as if someone had entered, taken him, and left without a struggle. For investigators, this level of precision suggested planning, not randomness. Whoever had come for Billy knew exactly what they were doing. The next step was to analyze the footage from the live stream. Specialists combed through the final minutes frame by frame, enhancing audio and isolating background noises. The faint sound of the door opening, the creak of footsteps, and the muffled scuffle were confirmed to be authentic. But there was more. At one point, just before the stream cut out, a low mechanical hum was detected, possibly the engine of a car idling outside. Investigators paired this with witness reports of a dark vehicle parked on the street that night, which disappeared just moments after the broadcast ended. As they built their timeline, a troubling discovery emerged. The strange codes that had flooded Billy's chat for weeks weren't random. Cybercrime experts translated some of the strings into encrypted coordinates and timestamps. These codes had hinted at the exact night and hour when Booterby planned to act. It was a trail hiding in plain sight, overlooked by most because of its complexity. To investigators, this was a clear sign that Billy's disappearance was premeditated. Attention turned to Booterby, the elusive figure already notorious in online spaces. Digital forensics traced several of the anonymous accounts that had posted the codes directly to servers previously linked with his attacks. Even though Booter had gone to great lengths to cover his tracks, his pattern of digital signatures was unmistakable. It was the same trail he had left when he sabotaged other streamers in the past. Sudden interruptions, coded warnings, and eerie foreshadowing. This time, however, his activities had escalated from online harassment to a physical crime. Investigators also uncovered chilling evidence from Billy's computer. Hidden among his files were screen captures of private messages sent days before the disappearance. These messages, filled with cryptic threats, suggested that Billy had known he was being targeted. He had brushed them off, never believing they would materialize into something real. To the detectives, these messages were another piece of proof linking Booterby to the crime. The public followed every development obsessively. Online communities organized themselves into digital sleuthing groups, sharing theories and combing through old streams in search of overlooked clues. Some discovered that Booterby had hinted at his plans in obscure forums, bragging about taking a goat off the board. Others pointed out eerie similarities between Billy's case and unsolved incidents involving smaller streamers whose sudden disappearances never gained mainstream attention. By now, investigators were convinced Booterby was more than just a hacker. He was a predator who thrived on spectacle, leaving trails of fear and chaos behind him. The missing streamer case was no longer just about Billy. It was about uncovering how far Booterby's obsession had gone, and how many victims had already fallen into his trap. Each discovery pointed to a disturbing truth. The disappearance wasn't an isolated act, but part of something much bigger. When authorities finally tracked down Booterby's hideout, the scene they uncovered was darker than anyone had imagined. The small, unassuming building sat on the edge of an industrial district, a place so ordinary that no one would have thought twice about it. From the outside it looked abandoned, dusty windows, rusting doors, and graffiti-covered walls. But once investigators forced their way inside, the reality was far more sinister. The dimly lit rooms were filled with computer towers stacked on top of each other, wires snaking across the floor, and monitors glowing with endless streams of code. It was clear that this was not just a hacker's workspace, but a command center for something much bigger. The first thing detectives noticed was the wall. Covering nearly an entire side of the room were pinned photographs, maps, and screenshots. Dozens of faces stared back, some of them popular streamers, others barely known to the public. Each face was connected by strings of notes, symbols, and numbers, forming a web of targets. At the center of it all, in thick black marker, was Billy the Goat's picture, circled multiple times. This was not random trolling, it was obsession, meticulously documented and carefully executed. The deeper investigators searched, the more disturbing the findings became. Hidden in encrypted folders on Booterby's computers were hundreds of recordings. These weren't just clips of hacked streams, they were surveillance files. Hours of footage showed different streamers in their own homes, often filmed without their knowledge. The angles suggested cameras had been planted or accessed through hacked devices. In some files, the subjects were laughing and playing games, unaware they were being watched. In others, the recordings ended abruptly, raising chilling questions about what had happened afterward. Among these files, investigators found one dedicated folder marked simply with Billy's initials. Inside were detailed notes about his streaming schedule, his giveaways, even the times he typically left his house. It was a catalog of his life, broken down into patterns and vulnerabilities. This level of detail left little doubt. Billy's disappearance had been orchestrated long before the night of the break-in. Yet the most shocking discovery wasn't just the surveillance. In a locked cabinet, authorities uncovered personal belongings that did not belong to Booterby. Items ranging from gaming headsets to clothing, even wallets were stacked and labeled with names matching the faces on the wall. These objects were not trophies of digital victories. They were proof that others had been targeted, and some may have already vanished without drawing public attention. The Billy the Goat case was not the beginning, but part of a sequence, a larger pattern of crime stretching back much further than anyone had realized. When news of the discovery broke, the internet erupted. Fans who had once seen Booterby as a reckless prankster were forced to confront the truth. He had been operating as something far more dangerous all along. The myth of the chaotic hacker had collapsed into the horrifying reality of a predator who thrived on blending digital and physical control. Billy the Goat's disappearance was only the most visible piece of a puzzle that was still being uncovered. What began as an online rivalry had spiraled into a chilling reminder of how blurred the line between virtual life and real danger had become. Booterby wasn't just a name whispered on the internet anymore. He was a figure of terror whose reach extended far beyond the screen, leaving behind a trail of victims and questions that might never fully be answered.